Good morning. Welcome to Tangled Vines, Summer Squashes and Cucumbers. In this class, we're going to talk about hopefully how to grow squashes and cucumbers all the way from seed starting to harvest. I'm Joyce and this is Tammy. Tammy's going to be your leader today. And this is episode 5 of our spring series on vegetable gardening for North Texas. We'll start with how to grow your squashes and how to plant them from seed, and most importantly, how to protect your crop from dreaded squash bugs and vine borers. But before we begin, we want to review what we've done in our previous classes and show you the progress that we've made in our garden. So we're going to start by doing that. Let's go over here. So look at these potatoes. These are huge. When were you going to hill them?
I'm hilling them today.
Today, okay. So this is, what, about 2 feet tall?
Yep.
These are our garlic, and those are...
The yellow leaves are just from trees.
Yeah, that's debris from the wind. Our bok choy has flowered, so that's no good to eat anymore.
We're going to take it out.
But yeah, it needs to come out, and our cauliflower still needs to come out, but we thought the flowers were pretty. This kale is still doing fine.
That's my dinosaur.
Yeah. And the cabbage is taking over. This is our Chinese cabbage. I wanted to show these aphids on here. We have not sprayed any of this with any kind of pesticides. And if you look on the back side of this leaf, you will see millions of aphids.
What color onion do you want for lunch?
What color? Yesterday I had red, so I think I'll go with white today.
So I'm going to pull this one.
Okay.
Just so that people can see how big our little onions are getting.
Yeah. They're really starting to turn around.
Yeah, they're really bulbing now.
Yeah.
And then if we come on down here, my radishes have gotten huge. That's hand size. So.
Mm-hmm.
And they're pretty close to done. With the radishes, as they grow, they push themselves out of the ground.
Yeah.
So.
But they grew so fast. So I just want to repeat the question. She was just asking, how do we get the dill to be so big and bushy? And as Tammy explained, there's actually 2 plants in here that have grown together. But look how beautiful it is. It's really, and it smells wonderful.
So here's our pepper.
Yeah, still pretty small, hasn't taken off yet.
Small and hasn't taken off, but I think that's my bandits doing.
Speak of the devil, he's right over there.
He dug it up the other day. So it had to be put back in the ground. So here's our purple beans.
Ooh, look at those.
If you look really close, you can see they are fixing to start blooming. So get the camera on there, Tammy. They're fixing to start blooming, so we're going to start having purple beans here pretty soon. If you look here on our sweet pea, you can see I harvest them almost daily and eat 5 or 6 a day, just because they're so sweet and they taste so good, nice and crunchy.
And they're good on your salad too.
One thing that I can say is, we used a very good mixture in our soils when we did our raised bed and did all of the pots. We have not had to fertilize yet with all of this growth. So it's been a good 60 days since we started the gardens, so I will be fertilizing with fish and seaweed. But even our marigolds are looking awesome. Awesome. So the only thing that we have not had really good luck with so far is my carrots. They are starting to grow a little bit, but let me tell you, I'm not a patient person. I want to put it in the ground and I want to see some real stuff going. I had one bigger looking one, and I pulled it so I could see what he was doing, and he wasn't doing nothing. Now that we've taken our little tour, I guess we'll talk about squash and cucumbers. I had planned on already for having starts for this week. My vendor couldn't get to me. The order was there. It was coming out of Louisiana, and he had no truck driver. So I did not get the veggie order that I was planning on. My other 2 vegetable vendors have not had anything ready for me the last 2 weeks. So it's kind of hard getting all of this stuff in. So the things that we can start by seed, I did get a new seed shipment in. I'm going to tell you, go ahead and try to do it by seed. You see that our radishes went over really, really well. Can't say anything about the cucumbers, but the radishes did good. I think we can do the same thing with squash and with cucumbers. Our germination is between 8 and 10 days. So if you were to start your seeds this week, by next week you'll have your little seedlings up. It'll put you probably 3 weeks behind what it would have started with a 4-inch start. But we still have enough cool weather. Our cucumbers and squash do not start really developing until it starts getting a lot warmer, kind of like our okra and watermelons, that kind of thing. So we still have time to start by seed. And we're not going to miss anything. You know, it's a little late to be starting tomatoes by seed, but those things you can start by seed. When you're starting them by seed, I would say always use some kind of seed inoculant. If you don't want to soak your seed in seaweed or in a liquid BioStart, you can use the BioTone, which is a seed inoculant that you can put in the soil and do it. I kind of like letting my seed float and then taking it out and planting it. How long does it have to?
I've always heard 24 hours.
24 hours?
Yeah.
I think you could probably do it a little bit faster if you had to, but
Overnight.
yeah, overnight. You put them in today, you know, put them in your solution today, take them out tomorrow and put them in the soil. You should be good. The seeds that I did the first time, I did not do them that way. I just put them straight in the ground and then I watered in with the seaweed. So I didn't soak them. I think I would have got a quicker germination if I would have soaked them. Soaking them like that usually cuts down on your germination by 3 or 4 days. So that's good. Some things just germinate so easy, though, I don't see why you would do it. Like on radishes, they germinate like yesterday. You can plant them today, they did it yesterday. Your beans and peas and stuff are another thing that germinate really, really quickly. Usually the softer the seed, the quicker they will germinate. The really hard seeds are really hard to get to germinate. So this stuff, the cucumbers and the zucchini, we would just soak overnight and then plant them. You want your seeds a 1/2 inch to 1 inch into the soil. Put your finger in there and drop a seed. You get them in too deep and it just takes longer for it to finally make its way to the top. You get it in too shallow, it doesn't get a good root structure. So you do want to try to make it that 1/2 inch to 1 inch. One of the biggest problems that we have here is going to be your squash vine borer. And it's a little moth. I think it's beautiful. Joyce thinks it's ugly. I think it's really, really pretty. But she will lay her eggs on the underside of the leaf and in the stems. Those eggs, it takes about 10 to 12 days for them to hatch. Then that little guy is going to go into the stem and your stems kind of will fold in on themselves. They can't get the moisture that they need and you'll have a dead plant.
They hollow out the stem, basically.
Yeah.
They hollow it out and they leave behind this mushy mess.
She's saying that they hollow out the stem basically, which causes it to collapse, but it makes like a mushy mess in there. You can go in and look and it's got all kinds of, I looked at it online. You can do surgery. I'm not going to hunt them little worms out and take them out. But if you go in and look, you have the litter and everything, and you have no meat inside your stems anymore. If you will go out, because your timing is about 10 days, if once a week you go out and inspect your leaves, you can see if you've got eggs laid in there. And the moth lays a pretty little kind of yellow golden egg, and they'll be in clusters. And if you see that, you can either scrape it off and smush them between your fingers, and yes, that's a technical term for us garden growers. You smush them between your fingers and you don't have to worry about it. If you don't want to smush them, you can take a knife and put them in soapy water, just soap and water. That'll kind of kill them, and then you can just dump them out somewhere. BT will slow them down, so you can spray like once every 7-10 days. Spray, and it will slow down the moth and the development of the eggs. It's not going to do anything to the moth, but the development of the eggs and the little worms it will take care of. Some people have been known to take BT and inject it into the vine itself. You take a syringe and inject it. That's a little more work than what I want to do for squash. You know, I can usually find a farmer's market that has organic squash. So I don't want to be out, well, I don't have time to be out there to start with. I barely have time to walk my dogs. But just spraying is going to slow it down. Making sure that you're watching your leaves will slow it down. The other thing that they say works, I don't know, but I will tell you, is putting out yellow bowls of water, maybe a little bit of soap in it, but the yellow, that's what attracts the squash vine moth. And so if you do the yellow bowls, they'll be attracted to that yellow bowl and the water, and they drowned in the water instead of being able to lay on your leaves. So that's another very organic way of controlling these guys. So the next little bug that you're going to have problems with in this area is squash beetles. Squash beetles look like stink bugs. You will probably mistake them for stink bugs because when you squash them, they both stink. Your squash beetle is going to be a little bit rounder, flat on the top, and then if you flip him over, you know, you just ask him to roll over, he'll have little orange stripes on his underneath side, and so you know that he's a squash beetle. Squash beetles are very difficult to control. There's not really an organic control for them. You can take and go and pick them, put them in a glass of water with a little bit of soap. They'll drown. Also, they were saying because they like to get under flat things at night. So if you take and you put you a board across your garden at night, the next morning you can get up, take that board, flip it over. You'll have a bunch of them on the bottom. Then you just squish them all. You take another flat surface and squish them, or like here, we could just throw them on the thing and squish them. That's going to be your best control of squash beetles. Since we are organic, we do not want to suggest any kind of chemical control. If you do have to use a chemical control, I think that maybe we just need to not grow that crop and find another. It's like, if you've got bugs, I don't want to spray you, I'm just ripping you out and you're going in the dumpster. I think that's how I turned organic, is I did not want to spray chemical all the time. And every time I try to spray chemical, I have an asthma attack. So I quit that, and so when everybody got sick, you know, if anybody got anything, mealybug, I've got 2 plants that the mealybugs attack every year. And I just go out there and rip them out and throw them in the trash, and then I don't have a problem with them anymore. So I need to learn not to plant that plant every year. I'm thick-headed.
What is BT?
BT is, say the word.
Bacillus thuringiensis.
Bacillus, yeah, BT. Yeah, and it's an organic source. It's a bacterium that is naturally in the soil in areas, and so it's not going to hurt anything. Well, bugs, the worms. Yes, ma'am.
When you plant your squash seeds, do you just plant one and go over, or do you put them in a cluster of 2 or 3?
She wants to know if when you plant your squash seeds, do you do it 1 per hole or do you do 2 or 3? I always say err on the safe side. So I would say plant 2 or 3 in 1 hole and then go to the next. You need to plant them about 18 inches apart. That way with that 1 hole, if you get all 3, man, you've done good. You can pull 1 out. But you might not get all 3. You might only get 1. So, yes.
Farmer's Almanac says that you should always put 3 seeds in a hole. 1 for you, 1 for the birds, and 1 for God.
It's a good saying. You know? Also, leaves of 3, let it be. Yes, ma'am.
I have a question. I lost my squash, both the zucchini and the yellow squash, to this white powdery fungus that
Yes.
I never get rid of.
That is powdery mildew. So, number 1, make sure you're not overwatering. Make sure you're not watering at night and up top on the leaves and that. Water from the soil. Powdery mildew just attacks when things are staying too wet, and you know, they attack our crepe myrtles something horrible because we put our crepe myrtles in the landscape. You're watering your grass for all summer, try to beat the heat, and therefore our crepe myrtles get too much water and it causes the powdery mildew. It's a fungus. You can put neem. Neem is a really good source. One thing on top of the plant, when you start seeing that powdery come, do it on top of the plant. One thing I'll say is neem is an oil. So either do it early in the morning to where you know that the leaf is going to dry before the sun comes out, or do it late in the evening after the sun's going down. Because if you put that oil base on a leaf when the sun's up over it, it's going to burn it. How often do we fertilize? It depends. If you're in just a regular pot, you know, like we're doing our pots, I would say and we're doing organics, I would say every 30 to 45 days. If you're doing a raised bed like these guys, they don't lose as much as fast, so I'd say 60 days. Yes, ma'am.
Do you think trellising is a good idea?
I do think trellising is a good idea. It keeps things up off the ground to where you don't have to worry as much about the soil staying too wet and rotting the plant. And vertical gardening is awesome.
What are the best ways to do it?
If you have they want to know the best ways to trellis plant. If you have a fence line like we've got, I'm going to trellis the squash and the cucumbers and that against my fence back here. I'm just going to let it grow up, and I'll use the plastic tape to make sure that they stay on the fence. I'm going to do that with our cantaloupe and our watermelon also, because cantaloupe and watermelon, they get really, really big for a little bit of fruit. It would take over, your entire garden, one plant. You want more than one plant. So I'm going to do that also on the fence. You could use fence, you could use regular trellis, you could use lattice work. You can do the teepee like we did with our beans. Those would do fine with the cucumbers and with the squash. Maybe not cantaloupe or watermelon, because they'll get so heavy. You'll want something harder. But you could also, you could take and do a kind of teepee shape with 2 pieces of lattice and make it stand up in a point, and you could get them to grow up on there. Yeah, just cover the row with it and they'll go up and you'll be able to harvest. They get really, really big. You do have to plan on a large area when you're growing these guys. Some of our gardens are just way too small to grow cantaloupe and watermelon, but we're going to try this year. I will take over this whole fence line when it's done. I have my Sweet 100 in that corner, and I'm kind of worrying about it because now that the trees have started leafing out, I'm not getting a lot of sun right now. And that's where I wanted to grow it, was in that almost corner light, so I could get it to go up. So I might have to move it back this way. I'll have to watch the sun for a while. But I'm going to do, because Sweet 100s get huge. They're indeterminate. They just keep growing and growing and growing. And so I wanted to do it there so it would have lots of room to spread out and hang up there. But we'll see how it works out. Yes, ma'am.
You need to plant squash and cucumbers so many feet apart.
She wants to know how far apart for the cucumbers and the squash. It says 18 inches. Our squash vine borers attack cucumbers also. So if you have problems with your cucumbers, that squash vine borer can be the problem. One of the other problems too, is a lot of people don't realize, is that snails and slugs and peel bugs do a lot of damage at the soil level of these guys. And so I brought this guy out. Shake it in your garden to keep those guys from taking over. It's just Sluggo Plus. Sluggo Plus will take care of, I say roly-polies, but the sow bugs, pill bugs, slugs, snails, and it's organic and you don't have to worry about it. And you can just shake it out there and then about 30 days, unless we get huge rains. Yes, ma'am.
For lack of a better term, socially distancing your squash and cucumber away from tomatoes?
Okay, squash and cucumbers away from tomatoes. No, ma'am. Yeah, I mean, that was cute, social distancing. It went, wing, and I finally got it. 6 feet apart at all times. Until you inoculate them. When they're fully vetted, then they can get back together. I'm sorry. It's been a strange year and a half. Very strange. We're learning all kinds of new terms, and so yeah, no, your tomatoes will be fine. Tomatoes, they're indeterminate ones, really get really big and sprawly. They can get 4 or 5 foot across if they're not contained well. Your squash, your cucumbers, yes, they can get big, but I don't think they're going to cause a problem. I had, what did I have? I had my tomato, pepper, and there was something down there that was a vine. Was it, cantaloupe and something else. Anyway, I had it all in that one little bed here, and it did really, really well. We got tomatoes galore. Every time we had a cantaloupe come on that it looked like it was getting close to being, it disappeared. I don't know who kept stealing my cantaloupe, but they did. I was a little upset. Tomatoes, it made so many, it was Rapunzel, and it made so many tomatoes that the whole world could have come and stole tomatoes and we'd still had tomatoes.
We have a tomato plant that it grew tall, but it didn't produce any fruit.
A tomato plant that didn't produce fruit, but it grew tall. So what were you fertilizing with? Huh? Oh my God, you said the bad word. I will not repeat it, but let's say that she fertilized with something that I just can't handle. So this year I want you to get either the tomato tone or the garden tone, either one. Fertilize with that. The stuff that you were fertilizing with has way too much nitrogen and will cause lots of green growth, but it's going to do nothing for buds and that kind of thing. The second thing, make sure you're not running your bees and stuff off, because they've always, they've got to have that pollinator and that kind of stuff. Third, don't water from the top. If you water from the top, any cross-pollination that you got, you can wash off, and then you won't. Just make sure it's all organic and that it's not an organic fertilizer that is for green growth. You want your nitrogen and your potassium and your phosphate to be kind of even, not 15, 15, 15, because we know that that is not a organic ratio, but you do want it to be kind of close together, like 6-2-4 or one of those things, and you'll have a better luck with it this year. And you just keep coming back. If you have problems, come back. We'll try to answer it. We don't know all the answers, but I can guarantee we can figure it out. Yes, ma'am.
I had a lot of yellow flowers, but no fruits.
What's it on?
Squash.
So she's got lots of yellow flowers on her squash, but she's not getting fruits yet. Do you know you're not getting fruits? The flower. Last 2 years. It's probably a pollination problem. And if you don't have a lot of bees, introduce something that's going to bring in the pollinators. African blue basil, well, any of the ornamental basils will work. Marigolds. Just bring in things that our bees are really going to want to come and eat at, and you'll get your pollination.
I read parsley was good also for pollination. Is that
She said she read parsley is good for pollination. I think maybe if you let your parsley go to flower, that it will be, because I'm surprised we don't have bees here right now. It was a little cold this morning, so they're probably still asleep. But letting these guys stay in the garden blooming like that, the bees have had a ball. I've got ladybugs like you would not believe this year, and I don't know where they came from. A lot of times, if, she was telling you that we've just let the aphids sit there, and we're letting the aphids sit there, and it's bringing the ladybugs over here, because this is where we see them the heaviest. It's bringing the ladybugs over here, and so you can get your own little ecosystem going and take care of everything in your garden. Yes?
Erica Silva on Facebook wants to know if we have any suggestions for getting rid of fire ants and raised beds.
Fire ants and raised beds. You can make a solution of diatomaceous earth and water, and you can drench your bed with that. You can also use the mound drench. It's got pyrethrin, not pyrmethrin, pyrethrin in it, and you can do a drench in your bed. Also, once you get them out of your bed, use a little bit of dried molasses, sprinkle it across the top. Fire ants are a putrid ant. They are not a sweet ant, so it will keep the fire ants from making a new home. Yeah, after you know that that's gone, then you can put your molasses on, and it will cut down on the fire ant activity.
was that a good idea to put in your garden beforehand?
You can. It's not going to hurt anything. We use dried molasses all the time on our landscapes and that, because it actually feeds all of your microorganisms that are in your soil anyway, all of the good guys. It's like feeding them crack. They get real happy and they dance a lot. We have something called Stimulate, which is humate and dried molasses mixed together that you can put in your soil. Or we just got in our new shipment of dried molasses, 50-pound bags. So you can do that. You can put it on your garden. You can put it on your lawn. You can put it in any of your beds. We really like dried molasses. There's no other questions. Next week we'll be out here again. We're talking about more vines because we're going to be talking about cantaloupe and watermelon and get those in the ground. And then we will do okra. We still have some really good classes coming up and things to plant and see how our garden's growing next week. Hopefully my squash will be up and y'all can see them, that they actually worked. Thank you.